Okay, before I end this video, I want to say thank you to a guy called Edin who commented on my last video, The Myth Surrounding Tyson Fury. Thank you very much. I'm going to get usual content out, as in like predictions, fantasy matchups, and what have you, but there's a few subjects that I want to cover in boxing that I haven't really heard anyone speak about, such as Tyson Fury, the World Anti-Doping Agency, and some other ones that I'm going to come out with. If you like these videos, please share them. It does help me out a lot. Or just leave a comment saying what you think of them. And if you don't like them, that's absolutely fine. Any feedback is good. I'll happily have a respectful discussion with you. Just don't be rude and disrespectful. Otherwise, I'm just going to block you. I'm not even going to entertain any rudeness from anyone. And next of all, this is my honestly held opinion. I'm not stating anything here. Nothing here is a statement of fact. It is hard to prove things as factual. See these as unlikely coincidences that, in my mind, have built a picture that I want to share with you. And I do not endorse any harassment any harassment of any of the companies that I'm about to mention or any of the fighters that I'm going to mention. These fighters, I'm not saying that they are all on drugs or anything like that. The ones that I'm going to mention, I'm just using them as an example. Okay, there are plenty of other examples I could have came out with, but these fighters that I'm going to mention here are relevant today, and that's why I'm mentioning them. Okay, so let's get on to this. The myth surrounding the World Anti-Doping Agency. Now, the World Anti-Doping Agency, for those of you who don't know, it's a far-reaching, basically governing body that drug tests athletes, okay, for things like anabolic steroids, EPO, human growth hormone, peptides, etc. Now, this sounds like a wonderful thing if you're of the belief that using drugs is cheating and gaining them an unfair advantage, okay, and that it's immoral and unsafe. I'm not of any of those opinions. In fact, I believe that the drug testing the World Anti-Doping Agency uses makes sports uh, less fair, basically. It gives fighters and athletes with more money a much larger advantage than if they weren't being tested. And I believe it makes it unsafe for the athletes, and that drug testing just needs to go away. Now, I have no problem with a federation that tests people for drugs. I have no problem with that. But the problem is there's no federation that doesn't test athletes for drugs. And to me, this is a big problem. You see in powerlifting, strongman, and bodybuilding that they have federations where they don't test for drugs, and the um, bodybuilders aren't athletes, they're basically glorified models. But powerlifters and strongmen are athletes. They don't have to lie about using drugs, they can be completely honest. They don't have to use any untested and unsafe substances to get around the drug testing. And because they can be completely honest about this stuff, they can go see a doctor, say what they're doing without any fear of the doctor leaking something to the press. Okay, so let's get into why, first of all, I believe drug testing is unsafe. So, the World Anti-Doping Agency, obviously they're testing for drugs. There's many drugs on the market. I say on the market like the black market, or that you can get prescribed by a doctor, that will help with your performance and are very well regulated. By the way, sorry, drugs in the black market are not well regulated. Okay, so let's remix that a little bit. If I could openly go to my doctor and say, I'm competing in a sport and I want this drug for my advantage, right? Without any fear that it would get leaked, I wouldn't. If that was the case, right, I wouldn't have to. I say me, I'm speaking as if I'm an athlete getting around the drug testing. I'm not an athlete. I'm not drug tested. I may be drug tested in the future, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, so let's rewind and remix that quickly. If I had no fear of the doctor leaking the information to the press and me losing my license, then I wouldn't have to go and buy stuff on the underground in the black market, which is obviously with things like testosterone, etc. There have been several people who have died because they've caught an abscess. They've got an abscess from tainted steroids. There's been situations where they haven't been sold what they thought it was. So, for example, you might buy testosterone that has been cut with a cheaper powder, and that thing has more side effects. It might be overdosed. So you might think you're taking 200 milligrams of testosterone when you're actually taking 400 milligrams. There's many reasons why outlawing things sends people to a black market where it's less safe. You have to think about alcohol during the times of Prohibition. Well, people used to brew their own alcohol in like bathtubs and stuff, and that's very unhygienic. Nowadays, with cannabis, it's illegal in most countries, but pretty much everyone goes and smokes it. And I say everyone who wants to. I don't smoke personally. People can find this stuff very easily, and a lot of the times it's grown unethically. So, particularly with stuff like heroin and cocaine, it's very much linked to the slave trade. Literally, people slaving over creating it. Um, it might be cut with something, like I said, and oftentimes you're buying these things, you don't really know what they actually are. For example, people have even laced weed with ecstasy and stuff before, so people have smoked it and had very crazy effects that they weren't expecting. That's just an example that you can relate to, and most people agree with. From what I've seen, most people don't believe cannabis should be illegal because they say, well, it's not exactly unethical. It's people use it anyway. What's the point in illegalizing this substance? And I agree with that. And it's the same with steroids. I think having this as a taboo subject where athletes can't even discuss it actually makes it less safe because they're not buying pharmaceutical grade. In my country, the United Kingdom, at least 5, 6 years ago, it was legal to use anabolic steroids for recreational use. I don't know if it still is now. The reason I know that is I used to work in a gym where lots of people were using drugs, and I knew several people who caught abscesses because they couldn't just go buy it from a doctor or in a pharmacy. They got tainted gear, got an abscess. I knew several people who thought they're buying testosterone when it'd been mislabeled, etc., etc. This happens a lot. Next reason I don't believe drug testing makes anything safer is, like I said, there are substances such as testosterone that are very well researched and to a lesser degree, but human growth hormone. Human growth hormone really isn't a performance enhancer, it more or less just helps with soft tissue repair, things like connective tissue. It doesn't really make you train harder, or it's not particularly anabolic. But for example, testosterone is used to be sort of the main performance enhancing drug, and then nandrolone, which has been used in some clinical trials for um, I believe people with osteoporosis and arthritis. Those things are very easy to detect. Okay, so you might have there's a form of testosterone called testosterone enanthate and sort of its cousin cypionate, which are usually used in people who have testosterone deficiency. They'll give them that for testosterone replacement therapy. Both of those drugs require you to inject once to twice a week, really depending on how much you're using, right? But they stay in the system for about 3 months. They're detectable for about 3 months off the top of my head. So what do athletes go and do? Do they say, not going to take testosterone, I'm going to get caught? No, that's not what they do. They go and buy 3 different forms of testosterone. There's one called testosterone propionate, where it's best if you inject it every day to keep your levels high, or 3 times plus a week. With that, you have to think, where are they getting testosterone propionate if it's never used in people with testosterone replacement therapy? They get it off a shady doctor or from the black market. They're injecting more frequently, and it's probably not as clean. So they're, I mean, literally as sterile. So they're greatly increasing their risk of getting an abscess or very serious infection and dying. Next one would be testosterone suspension. So testosterone propionate has a detection of 3 to 6 weeks. Now they get into testing. They get into the testing season. Testosterone suspension. It's a water-based testosterone. It's incredibly painful to inject, and you're going to inject that once to twice a day. Again, if that is not clean, you could really, really hurt yourself. The detection time for that is about 24 hours, but there have been cases where, because it's not been mixed properly, the crystals haven't dissolved. Yeah, I know, literally, the powder hasn't dissolved properly, and people are caught for up to a week. And then there's another one called testosterone base, which is very difficult to detect also. It's about the same as suspension, but slightly easier to get around the testing with. Again, you're going to inject that once to twice a week. It's not used in any, once to twice a day. It's not used in any clinical trials that I can find. No doctor's going to prescribe that to you, so you're just getting dodgy gear and injecting that into you multiple times a week, and thus increasing your chance of dying of an infection. Next way people get around drug testing. So you want an anabolic agent that's going to increase your muscle mass and strength in your recovery. Testosterone is quite easily detected. So there's a substance, a notorious substance called trenbolone. Trenbolone is where the typical roid rage, how do I say, the sort of the roid rage sort of cliche comes from, because trenbolone greatly, it affects your brain hormones, your brain chemistry in a very messed up way. If you're talking about testosterone, very few people get angry from testosterone. I think it's 3% of people, and even then it's not really shown to make anyone psychotic. The majority of people, their mood doesn't change or it slightly improves. Trenbolone, I've never seen somebody use trenbolone and not turn into a borderline schizophrenic. It really changes your brain chemistry. It lowers your you struggle to sleep because it affects the serotonin in your brain in a way I don't understand, as I'm not a biochemist or doctor, but it is not good. It's a horrible substance that I wish nobody would use, but people do use it. And athletes are oftentimes forced to use it because it's difficult to detect in comparison to testosterone. Um, Trenbolone is known, like I said, to really make people act up, makes them sweat like crazy to a dangerous amount. They get very big and strong very quickly, to a degree that they usually end up tearing muscles. You have to think, how many athletes have you heard of who are extremely lean and jacked and keep tearing muscles? I can name several off the top of my head. I won't, but whenever I hear that, I think to myself, Trenbolone, because I've seen it a million times. Alright, it's one of those ones that athletes should not be using. It has terrible effects on the cardiovascular system. If you can think of athletes who are lean, jacked, tearing things with terrible stamina, you can pretty much guarantee Trenbolone is in their system, in my opinion. Okay, I'm not going to name anyone here because then that would be an outright accusation. Uh, it's known to cause terrible effects on the heart. When you hear about people dying of heart attacks and people say steroids, it's usually things like Dianabol and Trenbolone. Dianabol isn't used as much because the performance enhancing benefits aren't as great and the detection time is worse. Uh, what else can I say about this? Have WADA really caught anyone for Trenbolone? Let me just check this quickly. So I just googled boxer caught using Trenbolone. All I can find is an amateur British boxer being caught. I would venture a guess that he's using Trenbolone acetate, which is easier to detect than Trenbolone base. Tren base is hard to find and expensive. That would be my guess there. So another drug people use to get around testing, and this is going to shock a lot of people, is insulin. I've known people use insulin. A friend of mine nearly fell into a diabetic coma because of this. He wasn't being tested for anything, but he was using it to get an advantage because it makes you a lot bigger and you recover much faster. Athletes are known for using insulin. You look at Victor Conti, he had all his athletes use insulin. You have to think how dangerous that drug is. But it has something absurd like a 2-minute detection time. They can't detect for insulin. Okay, so I think here I've gone over enough as to why I think it makes sports more dangerous. Okay, I don't want to be getting in trouble. This is not advice on how to get away with using drugs because, quite frankly, you should be using Trenbolone. You shouldn't use insulin, anything like that. I don't give any such advice on anything like this. I'm no doctor or anything. I would suggest, unless there's a federation for boxing or for other sports where you can use whatever you want, I wouldn't suggest you try and get around the test because at the end of the day, you should do, if you're going to do any, say, testosterone or anything, it should be under the advice and guidance of a doctor. And at the end of the day, if that doctor goes, oh, I'm going to leak this to the press, your career's over. You can make plenty of money in sports without using drugs. You can do very well, especially in today's day and age with social media. Just don't expect yourself to be the best in the world without using drugs. I don't advocate using them, not because I think they're immoral or because I think that every single performance enhancer is inherently massively dangerous. I don't advocate using them because you're not qualified to give yourself a safe protocol. Most people you come across are not safe, are not qualified. All right, and like I said, you can make plenty of money in the majority of sports using social media. You think if, let's say this channel gets to 10,000 subscribers, just 10,000, I said, hey guys, I've got a professional boxing match coming up. Do you think that would sell more tickets than a regular average Joe going into their pro debut? You think Hatman Boxing has over 70,000 subscribers now. If he was to say, hey, I'm going to have my pro debut, I mean, I'd go and watch it. I'd pay more money for that than I would to watch Anthony Joshua because Hatman's, I've been watching him for like 10 years, he's my boy, We used to talk on Facebook all the time, have a good laugh. Yeah, I'd go watch him or like G-Man or someone like that. So please don't take any of this as advice. Do not use any of these substances that I just mentioned, especially insulin. It is so, so, so dangerous. I believe Dallas McCarver died from insulin, I'm not sure. Please stay away from it. And I'll say as well, the doctors or the pseudo doctors who get people around tests and are happy with giving out insulin, they should be in jail, in my view, because it's a very dangerous drug. And I haven't even mentioned other things like EPO as well, another very dangerous one that people have been using for decades. Okay, so I think that I've explained clearly why I don't think that drug testing makes sports safer. Let's talk about why it doesn't make sports fairer. Okay, so what have I just explained to you guys there? I just explained that you can get yourself a shady doctor or what have you for the right money, and they'll get you around these tests, and you can maximize your talent, okay? Well, what happens if you're not very financially well off? You can't afford to go to where is it? Beverly Hills, Miami, places like that. Go to these anti-aging clinics, quote unquote anti-aging clinics, and get this advice. Can you? You can't afford to do that. So what are you going to do? You can't take anything. You can't take any substance that's going to greatly improve your performance because you don't have the financial means to get around the testing. But somebody who has a bit of money in their pocket can easily get around this testing. It's been demonstrated time and time again. Oh, and by the way, let's look into some of the biases of WADA. Okay, I'll provide the link for this article. This was written by Dan Raphael on 10th September 2015. Report: Floyd Mayweather used WADA-banned IV before Manny Pacquiao fight. On the eve of his record-breaking mega fight with Manny Pacquiao on May 2nd, pound-for-pound king Floyd Mayweather took an intravenous injection of saline and vitamins that was banned under WADA guidelines, according to a report by SB Nation on Wednesday. So I'm reading this word for word, by the way, people. Instead of saying World Anti-Doping Agency, I say WADA, okay? That's the only thing I've changed. Don't come to me suing me. If this is false information, sue Dan Raphael. Don't sue me. Or ESPN. Okay? 3 weeks after the fight, Mayweather received an exemption from the United States Anti-Doping Agency. The report said, however, Nevada State Athletic Commission Executive Director Bob Bennett said USADA does not have authorization to grant an exemption. Bennett said only the commission, which was not notified of the exemption until after it was given, can give an athlete an exemption, okay? Although substances contained in the IV were not banned by WADA, those standards, USADA says it follows. The fact that they were given intravenously was not allowed. Yeah, blah blah blah, whatever. There's a reason these things are banned intravenously, because they can be used to mask drugs. Yeah, you can mask drugs with an IV because it basically cleans out the system. Um, so they're willing to, with the guy with the biggest financial pocket in boxing, give him an exemption, do absolutely nothing over it, and then claim, oh, he's a clean athlete because he's using our year-round random testing. Well, does that not just sound like financial bias to you? Does that not sound like they're going, well, you know what, if we call Floyd Mayweather out on this, if we say that he's banned under our guidelines, we're not going to collect money for his fights in the future. That's what it sounds like to me if this is true. Next thing, why does Floyd Mayweather need an IV? He's saying that he walks around at 147 pounds. So why does he need an IV drip? Really, I mean, did he even get fined for this? Was he even given a slap on the wrist? No one even talks about this. Uh, and this happens all the time in sports. Let's look at a man who's very well known in the sort of the sports doping world, Victor Conti. Victor Conti. Victor Conti, he basically ran Balco Labs. I saw an interview where he said he got literally athletes through thousands and thousands of drug tests. Okay, Victor Conti is still allowed to work with athletes today. How is that allowed? How's that allowed? He's got his nutritional, you know, he's got this company called Snack where he sells zinc, magnesium, pre-workouts, which by the way, garbage, do not touch them, protein, and he has like a an altitude chamber, which by the way, altitude training does not actually work. I just want to say that don't deprive yourself of oxygen. The reason you're working harder is because you have less oxygen. It's so stupid. You're not doing more work, you're just getting more tired doing less work. It's the most ridiculous idea I've heard of in my life. Stop depriving yourself of oxygen in training. So this guy's allowed to work with athletes. He was only caught because somebody ratted him out, and that's all there was to it. The drug testing commissions weren't able to detect any of the drugs. So this guy can still work with athletes, they can train in his facilities and use his nutritional supplements, which, by the way, was the guys that he used for his doping anyway. People used to go there for supposedly nutrition advice and then he'd give them drugs. He got like 5 months in prison and now he's working back with athletes. Let's play devil's advocate here. Let's say your kid was going to a sports club and the coach had served 5 months in prison for some really terrible crime. Let's say, it was like, I don't know, some violent crime or something, right? Would you want that person working with your kids? No, you wouldn't. You would say that person must be banned from working with any athletes. Then why the hell can Victor Conte get dozens and dozens and dozens of athletes past drug testing for the space of, I think it was over a decade, so then spend 5 months in prison because someone ratted him out, not because the drug testing got better, someone literally ratted him out, and then going back work with the athletes saying, yeah, I'm just doing sports supplements. What? I mean, come on. I mean, that should be an automatic disqualification. How is this guy allowed to do this? So people think that drug testing is making things fairer. No, it isn't. How is this making things fairer? People who have the financial means to go and see people. I'm not saying Victor Conte is still doing this, but I'll say this: I don't trust him. I'm allowed to say that. If anyone wants to come here and defend Victor Conte, then, well, piss off, quite frankly. I mean, if someone wants to say that, oh, I'm being inappropriate, send me a cease and desist or whatever, I'll just tear it up. I'm just going to completely ignore it. It's just ridiculous. I'm allowed to say I think that this guy is up to what he was up to previously. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. And his chemist, I think it was his chemist whose name was like Angel Heredia or something like that, goes and works with Juan Manuel Marquez, and then suddenly Marquez is looking like the Incredible Hulk and knocks out Manny Pacquiao. Juan Manuel, let's take a look at this. Let's look at the before and after here. Jesus. I mean, come on, people. The before and after is just, it's insane. He had acne all over his back. He was like 38, 40 when this happened or whatever, and then suddenly he manages to knock out Manny Pacquiao. Come on, people. Come on, let's just be realistic here. Why in the hell was he allowed to work with that guy who was part of Balco Labs? So clearly they don't actually really care about stopping, in my view, they don't care about stopping this. It's more about collecting money because they're a company that wants to make money. This is, again, my view, right? I'm allowed to say what I believe here. If you disagree with me, or if anyone from WADA is listening to this, let me see, was Marquez WADA tested? Marquez WADA. And by the way, I'm not just picking on WADA. There's the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, etc., etc. But as far as I'm aware, they're all sort of registered under the World Anti-Doping Agency standard. The standard for drug testing is just terrible. It doesn't make anything safer. in my view, if you have pockets deep enough, you don't actually get tested anyway. Nobody cares who you associate with. It's just about, do you bring in enough money? Can we take some of your purse, okay? So honestly, I want to go a lot further with this, but I feel like it might get taken down by YouTube, or someone might say, "Oh, you're accusing me of this and that." I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just saying what I truly feel here. I have absolutely no outreach. Probably two people are going to watch this, so cool your horses. If you have such a problem with me saying this about drug testing commissions, WADA, USADA, UKAD, etc., well, how about you look into their actual standard for drug testing? How about you ask them these questions and say, well, why can't you make a non-drug testing commission? Why can't someone do that? Make a commission where nobody gets tested. Um, I want to talk about, actually, before I do go, the ethics. People seem to think, well, athletes are too ethical to do this, which is just absurd, especially in a sport like boxing, where the goal is to hurt your opponent, literally bludgeon them. Um, Recently, Gennady Golovkin said, "Oh, Canelo's legacy is tainted by drugs because he tested positive for clenbuterol." Well, has Gennady Golovkin shown any remorse for shattering somebody's eye socket? Do you really think he's that high and mighty that he wouldn't consider it? I mean, why do you think athletes last so much longer these days? Why do you think that is? I mean, come on, people. Let's actually look something up here. Golovkin. Gennady Golovkin joins Victor Conti's snack. Oh no! Oh no, oh no, oh dear, oh dear. Let's see, is there a picture of him with Victor Conti? Victor Conti. Let's see. Oh, I can't see a picture of him with Victor Conti. Let's see. Is that a full snap? Is that a full story? Let's see. Let's see. There's no pictures of him with Victor Conti. Let's see here. He joins Victor Conti's snack. I can't see him wearing any like snack gear or anything like that, or any attire. Let's go on YouTube quickly. I'll cut this out. So what I can find here is Golovkin had a short sort of a relationship, if you want to call it that, with Conti, that he went into his facilities, etc., and was kicked out for whatever reason. Why did you go into that facility? I mean, really? Come on, people. There's a million sports supplements companies. They're two a penny. It's a load of crap anyway. Whey protein is just protein derived from milk, and I'm not crapping on whey protein. I use it myself. It's a convenient source of protein. A pre-workout is basically a strong coffee. That is literally it. Of all the sports companies, supplements companies, all the gyms he could have went to, why did he go to the one that's run by a guy who got people past thousands of drug tests? I mean, come on, people, engage your brains here. Anyway, that's my view on drug testing in sports, why it needs to go, or at the very least they should make a non-tested organisation. People can use what they want under the care and guidance of a physician, and then they don't have to lie about it. Wouldn't that be amazing, instead of athletes having to lie about all this? Oh, and by the way, if you did that in the Olympics, you wouldn't be seeing world records getting destroyed and all this kind of stuff. You would be really, really, really quite surprised how they stagnate. You're not going to see world records getting crushed because, in the day, the majority are due to the eyeballs, people setting world records. Allowing athletes to take whatever they want is just going to make it safer because they won't have to inject as often, they won't have to be using things that get around tests and aren't regulated at all, and things like they won't be having to use things like insulin that are extremely dangerous. Okay, so tell me what you think here. I am going to do some regular content in terms of like I'm going to do a fantasy fight. Actually, this guy commented on my video, and it turns out he really likes Joe Kazaki, Andre Ward, and Marvin Hagler. I'm going to do a fantasy Super Six. So remember the Super Six tournament? We had Froch, Kessler, Ward, etc. Well, I'm going to do that with Hagler, Hopkins, Roy Jones, Ward, Kawasaki, and I was thinking maybe like Antonio Tarver. Uh, I think that would be a very interesting Super Six. I'm not sure who'd come out on top. I'm just going to do keys to victory for those fights. So tell me what you think here, people. Like I said, these are just all my opinions. I'm not saying, by the way, Gennady Golovkin's on drugs. I just found the statement ironic that people just buy this up when Golovkin's shown no signs of relenting in the ring. He's absolutely vicious. He breaks eye sockets and what have you, and then he goes to Victor Conti's gym. So he wants to throw shade at Alvarez. Well, let's be fair about things here, and call it for what it is. He's why would you go to Victor Conti's gym? Why did you go there? Is it really that great? I know he has an altitude chamber. I've gone over altitude training is a load of crap. It's a load of shit. Don't do it. Sleeping at altitude is a different situation, but training at altitude, you need to maximise the amount of oxygen you can get in. Train at sea level if you can do it. I'm at sea level myself. So anyway, thank you very much. Share this, tell me what you think, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.